In 2019, YouTube was caught violating the Child Online Privacy Protection Act, or COPPA. Since settling, YouTube has enacted new policies that are meant to serve as a smokescreen so they can dodge responsibility and scapegoat creators. As such, for my own protection, it is my obligation to advise you that this video is not aimed at children. My target audience is not children. Parental discretion is advised. Hey guys, how's everyone doing? This is the Sentinel watching over Geekdom, and welcome back to Sentinel Reviews. Our look at Dark Shadows, the horror collections, continues with The Happier Dead, released in March of 2014, written by Adam Ousden, directed by David Darlington and Darren Gross. The Happier Dead stars Stephanie Lynn as Amy Jennings and features John Chancer and Murray Melvin. As always, I will be discussing spoilers, so in the description box below will be the link to Big Finish's website, where you can buy The Happier Dead on its own or as part of the Horror Collections digital bundle. And as I've said throughout these reviews, it most recently came up again in the Lucifer Gambit, I'm not doing a ranking on these at the end of this, like I do with some of the bigger story arcs I've reviewed. Again, because all of the stories range from an 8 to a 10, and there isn't really that much to criticize. So again, a ranking would be based purely on personal preference, which I don't believe makes for a very strong ranking. So in that regard, I'm not going to mince words. The Happier Dead is my favorite story in this set. Oh, it's just so good. For a set called the Horror Collection, this is honestly one of the most brutal, horrifying stories in the entire set. Hang on, my gain's a little high. I'm gonna turn that down a little bit. Okay, that's better. So the story here is sometime after the Lucifer Gambit, and I believe one other story. I'd have to double check, but I think it's in the Welcome to Collinsport set. I haven't heard it, but this story works well as a direct sequel to the Lucifer Gambit, so no need to worry about that. Anyway, this story picks up sort of sometime after the Lucifer Gambit. Amy has gone back to Salem University, and she is studying under Professor Stokes. And in the interim time between stories, she has started dating a man named Simon Turner. Simon, long story short, is an everyman. He's a normal guy. And that's what Amy wants. She's trying to teach him about the supernatural so he can protect himself and fight back, as well as help her if she ever needs it. But really, she wants to get away from that world. Amy does. And she really wants that with Simon. There's also a funny throwaway line to the Bloodlust miniseries, where Simon tells her, if you wanted normal, you should have said yes to Mike Devereaux. And if you haven't heard Bloodlust, or if you've heard Bloodlust, you'll get a chuckle out of that. If you haven't, don't worry, it's not pivotal to the plot. Anyway, during one of their fights, because I should also mention this too, despite Amy wanting to get out of her world and live a normal life, Simon wants very much to be a part of her world. And after a fight they have where Simon makes a joke in poor taste about a werewolf, given Amy's history, Amy suddenly collapses and has a bout of pain. And Simon ends up taking her to the hospital. Not just any hospital, Collinsport Hospital, which Amy is furious about. For one thing, Collinsport is 2 hours away from Salem, so if she was sick or dying or in serious pain, why would he do that? And two, according to Amy, Collinsport Hospital is where you go to die. Except not anymore, because as Amy and Simon learn from a nurse named Pauline, people have stopped dying. And Pauline recounts this really brutal story about a man who died on the operating table, and then so the doctor began removing his organs for organ donation, and then he woke up during it, and the entire procedure was so traumatizing that the only thing the doctor could do was cut this patient's vocal cords to silence the screaming because nothing else he did worked. It's just, and that story, even though it's just being recounted as a story, it's so well executed. Pauline's recounting of it is brilliant. I forget the actress's name. The music works really effectively, and oh god, it's just so creepy because I think, feeling pain after death, which is something Dark Water, a Doctor Who episode, kind of talked about, is just something that is a concept that is so terrifying. Anyway, because Amy Jennings is Amy Jennings, Pauline asks if she could look into it, which she agrees to do with Simon's help. And we meet Dr. Balthazar, who's currently the man in charge of Collinsport Hospital. No, never mind, it's not important. And right away, seems very suspicious. Amy tries to throw him all these leads, see if he'll bite onto something, but he firmly believes that he doesn't believe in the supernatural, and that, what was the wording he used? He doesn't believe in the supernatural. That's kind of the brunt of it. And he warns Amy, "We run a tight ship," to which Amy replies, "Okay, it's time to sink it." And after he leaves, Amy goes investigating, and her and Simon meet a man named Edwin Beadle, played by Murray Melvin, who is just also fantastic, and who is a former friend of Professor Stokes's, and he is a soldier, and apparently he is in the hospital slowly dying. I think he says it's a failing heart. And again, Murray Melvin is great. He's a very distinguished, very renowned actor. I think if you watch my channel, if you're familiar with Doctor Who, you'll most know him for Billis Manger in Series 1 of Torchwood, as well as several of the audios. But again, he just gives a fantastic performance here as this sweet old man. Amy and Simon continue investigating the hospital when they see a patient get brought in, whose name I'm forgetting. He was in, I think it was a car crash, I don't remember, and half of his body has been burned away. The man on the cover. And again, Amy now sees firsthand people not dying. And it's just another brilliant, horrifying scene. And it's especially as the doctor tries to subdue him, like he tells a nurse to administer morphine, but because he doesn't have because he's clinically dead, he doesn't have a circulation system to pump the morphine through his veins, so it doesn't work. And this ultimately leads to the climax of the story, sort of the start of the climax, where Amy and Simon go to investigate the morgue. And all throughout this story, Amy and Simon are still trying to work out their relationship issues. Like, Simon finally told Amy he loves her, and Amy is unable to say it back. And as they're investigating, they're trying to figure out who would be doing this, who would be preventing these deaths, who wants an army of the undead. And then they meet the patient, again, the man on the cover, who I'm just explaining that way because I forget his name. And he lashes out violently because, he's in excruciating pain and he's terrified. And, after subduing him with an incident involving the incinerator, I'm trying to be really vague here because I do recommend this story. I think it works good as a standalone, and it's just so good. And real quick, because I'm going to get into spoilers here, and a lot of this story is a mystery. So if you don't want the ending spoiled, stop the video here. Again, The Happier Dead is my favorite story in the horror collection. I highly recommend it. Next week I will be reviewing Carriage of the Damned. All right? Final spoilers. Leave. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So Balthazar dies. He finds Amy and Simon snooping around the morgue, and when this patient is chasing after him, he pushes him into the incinerator, and this man pulls Balthazar into the incinerator with him. And it's then we get the reveal. As Amy points out, Simon has been asking the right question this entire time. Amy just hasn't been able to come up with the answer. Who would want an army of the dead? No one. But who would have something to gain by not dying? And then we get this twist. Edwin, Murray Melvin's character, is the one behind this. And it is a little bit predictable, I just want to say, there's a joke I heard somewhere. I don't know where I heard it from, but I don't take credit for it. But this story is kind of, we now return to the murder mystery show, where the killer is the most famous person in the guest cast. So yeah, and given that, for me, Murray Melvin is the only name recognizable in this story, it was sort of like, yeah, okay, he's going to be the one behind it. But the reveal is so well done, and so is the reveal of what's happening. When Edwin realized he was going to die, he realized that, with everything he did over the years, there was only one place he was going to end up. So, when it came close to his time, he confronted his Reaper. And he wrestled his Reaper. He wrestled her into a coma so that he wouldn't die. Unfortunately, it had also the side effect of no one in the vicinity being able to die. And then where this story truly shines is in its twist reveals, because we get all these brilliant little details teased throughout the story just adding up here. Like, for example, when he first met Amy and Simon, Edwin mentioned that he was here with his wife, the patient in the next bed. And as they leave the room, Amy says she didn't even notice Edwin's wife. And Simon says, I didn't notice her at first either. And as they're continuing to put everything together, Edwin mentions that only the dead or dying can see a Reaper. And he has a jar of these magical smelling salts. There was a whole name to them. Again, the small details I'm kind of forgetting. The only thing powerful enough to wake a Reaper from a coma. And he gives them to Amy because he poisoned Simon. And again, just the way that reveal is structured, you don't see it coming, and it's brutal. And there's this really tense, really dramatic, really beautifully acted scene where, when Simon realizes Amy would sacrifice one life to save hundreds, he does it himself. He breaks open the jar, and the Reaper claims Edwin, and then Simon dies, and that scene is so well done. Like I mentioned, Stephanie Lynn's weakest points in the Lucifer Gambit were when she had to get really hysterical, and here it works so much better. And we cut ahead at the very end. We jump ahead. Excuse me, that's better. It's some point in the future with Simon's funeral, and Amy is being consoled by Sabrina, her sister-in-law, who I mentioned in the Lucifer Gambit, and who will be the main character in next week's story. And she gives this really beautiful monologue. I love The Happier Dead. It's got brilliant atmosphere. It's got great tension. It's got a horrifying concept and a brilliant villain. And it's just really well structured. And that's kind of it for The Happier Dead. I just spent this entire review gushing about it. And yeah, there really isn't anything to criticize. So join me next week when, as I just said, we will shift gears to Sabrina Jennings. And all aboard, because we're taking our next stop on the Carriage of the Damned. But those are just my thoughts on The Happier Dead. Have you heard it? What are yours? Start a conversation in the comments below. Like, comment, subscribe. Click the bell next to subscribe to get notifications when I upload. In the description box below, you'll find the link to my Ko-fi where you can support the channel, and you'll find the link to my Twitter where you can follow me and get updates on the channel. This is the Sentinel watching over Geekdom, and I'll see you guys next time.